Good afternoon, and welcome to what we call the Big Show. The Big Show, obviously, is the show we do every single day when it comes to trying to wrap up whatever it is that is happening in the world of sports and in our world of Pittsburgh sports. I am obviously in a great place because we've got the U.S. Open to talk about. We have Aaron Rodgers who is in camp. We have all kinds of other good stuff that we are going to get to tonight. In fact, I have a U.S. Open expert coming on with me in a little bit, and we will talk a little bit about golf. But first up is, of course, the Steelers. Always the Steelers, mostly because, well, that's what we seem to be the most interested in, the Steelers. So I think that it's one of those things where, it's a big week for the Steelers, just from the standpoint of they have got their man in Aaron Rodgers. But one of the questions that you ask, and one of the biggest things that you want to ask, is this: what is it, or who is it, gets the credit for the fact that Aaron Rodgers is here? Who gets the credit? That's the question. And I would tell you that I think that it is really kind of, I think, twofold. A lot of people, he said basically Mike Tomlin, and of course Mike Tomlin was the point man, right? But by the same token, it is one of those situations where you have to really take a look into all of this stuff and give Omar Khan some credit too. Both of those guys made it happen. It wasn't just Aaron Rodgers. It wasn't just Mike Tomlin, even though Aaron Rodgers gave him all the credit. The reality is it was a team effort. I think that's the key. If you look at it, it is one of those things where you can't have it happen without, bottom line, without it being a situation of where everybody was on board with it. So it is pretty much one of those things where we could sit here and try and give credit and assign blame or whatever, but the reality of the situation is, I think, at least that's just me, I think that there's a lot of people that deserve credit in the Steelers organization, because to me, it doesn't happen unless everybody comes in and gets into place, period. And so I think that's what we're really looking at from a number of different ways and a number of different standpoints. It is important to note that you have to give a lot of credit to the Steelers at large, the Rooneys at large, Mike Tomlin at large. You got to give them all credit for making it happen. And that's why, even though Mike Tomlin's getting all of the credit or a lot of the credit, it feels to me, at least in many ways, it feels to me like, there's a lot of people that can get a lot of credit for it. So, you have to just try and go from there and go with wherever you are looking. That's what you have to, kind of give a credit to. And Mike Tomlin obviously is a guy that closed the deal. He's obviously a guy who he says, that he is somebody that is going to be always who the players say they want to play for, because obviously he's the coach. But it doesn't happen if Omar Khan doesn't make it happen. It doesn't happen if, Art Rooney doesn't greenlight, hey, we'll sit around and wait for this guy as long as we have to wait for him. So that's where, that's at least where I'm at. And it's one of those things where it's where we have to, really, really think about the Steelers organization and the strength of the Steelers organization. It really is, in my mind, something that is very, very, very strong, despite the fact that they haven't won in 8 years, despite the fact that they haven't, won a playoff game in 8 years, despite some of the problems that they've had recently, all that other stuff. To me, I think it really is important to note that. you know what? The strength of the organization is still the fact that the people that are in it. And the people that are in it, okay, they're the ones that really are going to pull people in and make it happen. So I feel like when we talk about the Steelers, you know, sometimes we lose our way a little bit and don't give enough credit where credit is due. But I honestly think that it is important for us to note and understand that, you know what, we have a pretty good situation for the Steelers here. And they do a good job. They really do. You know, another day with TJ Watt. I don't think anybody really should care about TJ Watt one way or the other. He'll be here. He'll sign in. He'll get himself together. He'll figure all that out. It won't even be that big of a deal. It won't. And so, you know, it's amazing to me how that works. But to me, you know what? When he signs and comes in, it'll be the same. I did see a report today that they were looking at guys like what's the kid's name? Jalen Ramsey and some of these other corners. I mean, they've already got enough old corners. I guess Jalen Ramsey's not old, but I'm not sure why you're getting involved in those guys. Sounds a lot more like the agent is probably making, you know, sure that there's some headway that is made when it comes to trying to drum up opportunities for his client. And so anyway, without further ado, I think we've got a guest. Can you hear me, Joe?
Sure thing. How are you, Paul?
Oh, man, I'm really under the weather, man. I'm sick as a dog. I had to leave. It was, you know, it was like 100. It felt like it was 100 degrees out there at the U.S. Open. So I had to go find another place real quick to try and do this podcast. The magic of the podcasting nowadays is I have my mic, I have my headphones, I have everything I need. Borrowed a little room, and I'm in good shape for, you know, at least to get this done. And now I've got you here to help me get through it, I guess.
Really?
Obviously, we haven't talked yet about Aaron Rodgers, about TJ Watt, about all the happenings of this week. So give us your thoughts on it.
Well, I mean, the thing when it comes to Rodgers, you know, it felt like this was a done deal a long time ago. And, you know, there was a handshake agreement between Rodgers and the Steelers because every offseason move they made was predicated around the fact that they knew who their starting quarterback was going to be this upcoming year. I guess my question in this regard would be, let's look at the scenarios first with Rodgers and then with Watt, because they're sort of similar when you really think about it. So what's the best case scenario with Aaron Rodgers? And if it's the best case scenario, do you assume he's going to be back next year? Because if the best case scenario, and I still don't think they're good enough to win the Super Bowl, but if they win the Super Bowl, then my argument is totally irrelevant. But what happens if they're good enough to get to the AFC Championship game? Is he just ride off in the sunset and say, look how good I am? Because that doesn't address their quarterback problem moving forward. So the best case scenario is actually the worst case scenario for the Steelers moving forward. Because I still don't know if I'm buying all in that this is a team that's going to be good enough to win the Super Bowl. And the reason I say that, you know, pick 28 to pick 3 is an awful, awful lot of draft capital. And there you ask yourself, you know, what's TJ Watt worth? What assets do you then have to sell off that could make that climb if this coming draft is the draft that has your quarterback of the future in it? Because let's be honest, you know, everybody wants to talk about, you know, the not losing record, yada, yada, yada. But in order to get a quarterback, either you have to pay through the nose or you have to suck. Look at the Penguins. Their sucking paid off in spades. The Steelers, I don't envision them doing that willingly. So, you know, what the worst case scenario is that, you know, they get to the AFC Championship game, get whacked by the Chiefs, Rodgers retires, one last, you know, flip of the bird to everybody that said he couldn't do it, and the Steelers are picking 28 and screwed.
Well, here's my question, though. If they win the Super Bowl, that's the best case scenario. Then it really doesn't matter, does it?
Well, I guess that's the rebuttal. Then, do you believe with Aaron Rodgers they're good enough to win the Super Bowl? I'm not ready to make that leap yet.
Well, no, and I think I would just say that basically, if you really think about it, I don't know if they're good enough to get to the AFC Championship game. But my point is, if they win a few playoff games, I think people will probably live with the fact that, it might push one more year down the road, the whole idea of going out and getting another quarterback.
Yeah, sure. But, again, what is because remember, people around, people down there say the Steeler way. I don't even know what the Steeler way means, but I hear it referenced all the time. Is winning a singular playoff game now the Steeler way? I don't think, and if it is, we've got bigger issues to fry than who the Steelers quarterback is.
Right. I think the Steeler way does involve winning games. I would hope it does. I would hope it involves winning playoff games and doing what you got to do to get to where you go. But at the end of the day, I feel like the other part of it is you have to understand that, you know what? The Steelers probably are a year or two away unless Aaron Rodgers finds some sort of fountain of youth. And if he does, and they go out and win a few games in the playoffs, I honestly think most people will be okay with it. Here's the thing, too. If you look at his incentive package, if they get all the way to the $19.5 million, it means they won the Super Bowl, because that means that's what it would take for him to get every one of those incentives.
Now, I don't listen necessarily down in your part of the world, but I'm the only person that I hear talking about this, and I want to get your thoughts, because I don't know why we just pretend that it's going to be okay. I feel very confident in knowing what I'm getting in Aaron Rodgers. I feel very confident knowing what I'm getting in DK Metcalf. I feel very confident knowing what I'm going to get with Arthur Smith schematically. I feel very confident knowing that the Steelers defense is going to make big plays. Special teams will be what special teams are. But why do we just, sort of function under the assumption that Fatano and Broderick Jones are going to be capable NFL tackles? Because, the whole getting to the Super Bowl, getting the AFC Championship game, that's pretending that those guys are just going to go do that. That's sort of like Arch Manning just being the best quarterback in college football. We've not seen him do it. Chris Fatano, we've not seen him do it. Broderick Jones has lots of room for improvement, and those are arguably the second, and maybe fifth most important positions on the football team, right and left tackle, with an aging Aaron Rodgers. Are people just assuming that Fatano and Broderick Jones are going to be more than capable NFL tackles?
I think that's a big part of the assumption, yes. I think the assumption is the situation where, you basically have to, have some faith that Broderick Jones going back to the left side, that is his natural side. You have to have some faith that Troy Fontenot is going to be, good based on what we saw last year. But you're right. If they don't get it done, it's going to be a big problem.
Yeah, listen, I understand that, but remember, Broderick Jones played like 4 games at Georgia. He does not have a lot of miles, so obviously there's room for his improvement, and he's switching back to the left side, as you alluded to. Fatano, we've never really seen play, but, you can do all the things that you want to do up front, and, they hopefully address, stopping the run, but I just people just sort of gloss over an unproven tackle situation, which, again, there's no team out there that has won the Super Bowl, gotten to the Super Bowl, that had subpar tackle play. I think that's in this day and age, with the pass, with the edge rush game, you could argue that QB is 1, left tackle 2, right tackle 3 in terms of the most important places on your roster.
Right. I think that the thing about it is, if those two guys don't get it done, then we've spent a whole lot of time, wasted time, talking about quarterbacks and receivers, haven't we?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, really, because if they don't get it done, then you know what? What are we talking about? Obviously, so there has to be a little bit of an assumption that they're going to be able to get it done.
I mean, I would assume the Steelers know better than I, but we've not seen it yet. We haven't. I mean, that's not up for debate.
No, we haven't. So we need to. Now, the whole reason we're out here in this neck of the woods, and we will be here all week doing my podcast up the street, is we are here for the U.S. Open, and Joe, this is your domain. I mean, golf is your thing. We've, had you on many times to be our golf expert, especially when the majors come. And, one of the things I've only been out here now 2 days in a row. And one of the things I will say is that I'm getting a little bit tired of hearing pros whine about how tough the course is.
Yeah, I mean, we were on property on Monday. The Ron Syrak, very good friend of my radio show, so eloquently put it last week that Oakmont is always a week away from being ready for the U.S. Open. It is the hardest golf course in America. The combination of that rough height, the combination of how fast the greens are, it is diabolical. It is. I still don't understand why people pay all that money and call that fun, because there's nothing fun about Oakmont. It is get your teeth kicked in, and it is a dogfight. I don't know if the weather's changed, but if it's firmed up and they've not gotten rain since Monday night, Oakmont drains pretty well. Even as sloppy as it was walking around in the rough, Paul. But this as well as I do, when you cross the fairways in the crosswalks, you didn't see footprints. So the fairways seem to be pretty tighty. And I know the Gil Hanse redesign has widened them in some spots, but if it firms up, the cut could be +9 just because of the struggle of making it stay in the fairway. And then obviously the rough takes over. To me, that's going to be the ultimate thing. And now if it rains over the weekend, I wouldn't be shocked if you got it to, 4 or 5 under. These are the best players in the world after all. But if that rain does not come in over the weekend, I wouldn't be surprised at all if it was, +8, +9 that wins it, just because that is already so tough. I get it. I don't agree. I don't agree with the USGA's philosophy about making it as hard as it possibly can be, to the point where you start to question, is it going to be fair? I saw Dustin Johnson on Monday morning on 2 hit one to like 6 feet below the hole, put too much cheese on it, and ripped it 30 yards off the green. That's a good enough shot that you should not be punished to that extent to a back hole location because, oh, by the way, there was a bunker like another 5 paces beyond the pin. But yeah, that's, hearing these guys talk about it is like, they might as well be saying water's wet. I think everybody at this point knows that it's going to be really hard. And, let's be honest, Golf Channel is just looking to fill some airtime because they got a lot of hours with live from to fill.
Yeah, I just feel like it's one of those things where maybe, it's enough. Enough is enough. You know what I mean? Like,
so that place is hard as hell as is. I mean, they could cut the rough to 3 inches and it would still be an incredible test, and right around par would probably win.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's the point. I don't know if you've ever played it before. I have.
Yep.
It's a tough course. They're right up. What is that? 18.
Yeah.
Which is right along the media center. 18 is amazing. That hole is a real golf closing hole.
Yeah.
And if you're in the rough of that hole, you have 0 chance at par unless you get extremely lucky with your third shot.
You're not. I mean, that was playing what, like 520 or no. I mean, you were when we were, standing at the ropes and you could kind of get in there and look, and we watched Justin Thomas chip on 18 Monday morning, and he was, from where we were sitting in the front row, he was no more than 20 feet away from us. And I couldn't see his shoes, and the only time we saw the ball was when it came out with the chip. And it was, again, you're not advancing that. You're not advancing that $195 to reach out of the rough. You're just not.
No,
that's impossible.
Right. So I mean, like I said, I think really, if you look at it, if you are in the rough, you have 0 chance at birdie, and par is actually going to be really difficult. I obviously had to walk down to see the 300-yard par 3 that everybody's complaining about. I guess, was that number 8? I kind of actually agree with the golfers on this. it's kind of a stupid hole to have a par 3
100%.
that's 300 yards.
100%.
That's just me. Now,
100%.
some people think it's great challenge and all the other stuff.
Mm-mm.
I don't like it at all.
No. I mean, 12 is, 9 miles. That's fine. That's a par 5. A par 3 is not, when you have to, when you're in your regular Sunday game and you're playing with a guy that's hitting driver on a par 3, you're like, he's playing from the wrong tees, right?
Right.
I just don't think that, even the best players in the world, a 289 or 292, whatever it's going to play, that's not a par 3. Move it up, make the green smaller, tuck the pin, whatever it needs to be. I do think there should be a statute of limitations on what a distance can be for a par 3. To me, that just becomes Mickey Mouse when it's that distance. And let's be honest, it's not like they're playing the local Muni in Cranberry Township. I mean, this is still the hardest golf course in the world. Well, maybe not in the world, hardest golf course in America. And you've got a 290-yard par 3 to boot.
The USGA, they seem to think that it's going to be funny that one of the days it's going to be over 300, like 301 or 302, which is just stupid.
Yeah, I don't, because to me, there's, everything has to be attainable, right? And, if you want to make Oakmont, reward the guy that, has the precision. The fairways are already more, difficult enough. But the notion of a 300-yard par 3 to me is just stupid because 17, I know it's up the hill, but 17, stretched out only plays 312, and that's a par 4.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. 17, and, I guess it's uphill versus downhill, so it's probably a little bit more of a difference in the shot you have to make. But the reality is you've got a really short par 4 and a really long par 3. It's just, I guess, a part of the charm of the course. But I got to be honest with you, I'm not a fan of it. I'm just not. I don't think you should have to hit a 300-yard shot on a par 3. I just don't.
No, I'm with you. Now, I would be cool because, they brought the ditch back on 10 and 11. If there was something, even if you made that a par 4, if you made 8 a par 4, but had, a huge waste area that either left you with, hitting, pitching wedge, or, letting somebody try to carry 3-wood over it, maybe that would be, but again, it is not. Oakmont is about precision. And I am just in total disagreement that a 300-yard, par 3 is anything but, bang and gouge golf.
Yeah, yesterday, Scottie Scheffler said the right rough on number 1 is the only rough you have a chance to get to the green and still make par. If there's any other pole where you're in the rough, you're probably screwed. That's ridiculous.
Well, I would only bark back that I think anywhere on the rough on 2, you could probably advance it just because of the severity of the slope.
Right.
Maybe 10 you could get away with, sort of chunking and running something down the fairway. But based on my experience of Monday, I would say that's accurate. I mean, when you got guys standing around and you can't tell if they have shoes on or not, you're not advancing it very far.
No, and one other thing that I thought was hilarious, they had a bunch of videos of guys on number 1, 150, 140, 150, 160 yards out, actually putting, basically. Yeah. Putting and the ball rolling past the hole. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I thought, again, I get it. You're trying to make the competition what it is, but if the course stays as dry and that rain doesn't come in and they keep the rough as high as it is, I think you're right. It could be 7, 8, 9 plus that wins.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And, that's the thing. If it dries out, generally it dries out with wind as well, Paul. So if you throw wind into that dry equation, it could be an absolute nightmare. Obviously, it's sort of cool. And I don't know if you go down to the social media rabbit holes, but watching all the videos and whatnot in the lead up with all the golf influencers that got opportunities, you sort of knew what they were talking about. So even just walking around in a practice round, you had a point of reference from what other people had told you, and you kind of knew what to watch for. And I thought that was really cool because I think I think you're going to see some gigantic numbers on 12 because that green, if you miss, you're dead. And then also 2. 2 is another hole that, again, if you can't put it in the right spot, you're going to be in big trouble. And I'll be real curious to see, because I think in 16, number 18 was the hardest hole in the property. And I noticed in my time sitting there, a lot of guys were chipping to that bowl area on the right side of the green, assuming that might be where a hole location is going to be. Well, if that's going to be there, you are going to see some monster numbers of anybody is short or long trying to knock that pin down, because if it's short, there's a huge ridge right in front of that. If it's short, that thing is going to be 30 yards back in the middle of the fairway as you're trying to chip back up to it one more time. It is, I think 18 is going to be unbelievable, especially if it firms up. They use that back right hole location. You're going to have a hard time getting it back there without, running the risk of going long. And then obviously you get above it coming out of the rough, you're in huge trouble.
Well, and I'll tell you, there's a number of places where you could say you're in huge trouble. Joe, nuts and bolts of it. Tiger Woods actually did a little video, said, if you're going to win this, the guy that's going to win this is the guy you got to be able to hit it far and obviously be accurate. So I guess the question I have for you is, how do you handicap it?
You'd be a fool if you didn't pick Scottie Scheffler. You mentioned Tiger. This is the most Tiger-ish thing we've seen in a really, really long time. Spieth was good when in majors, but Spieth didn't win like Scottie's winning, and Scottie, kicking people's tails along the way. He is looking as Tiger-ish as we've been. You got to go there, but to the larger point, you mentioned Jordan Spieth. The guy putts, used to be one of the best putters in the world. This to me, obviously you got to find fairways, you got to find greens. But when you've got greens that are running 15 and a half, 16, the best putter in the world, who can nestle it in from 45 feet away? Who can limit the 3-putt? The long hitter, Spieth moves a little bit, but guys are going to make birdies. They're the best player in the world. But, to lag putt successfully. And I'd be willing to bet that, if somebody wins this thing that comes out of nowhere, they're going to be top 3 in putts gained, on the green and, have the fewest number of 3 putts. Because in addition to those greens being very fast, they're freaking huge. A lag putter on regular greens from 80 feet is impossible. It's hard. But when they're rolling like that, you've got all that undulation. So anybody that putts it well, because everybody's going to have to deal with the conditions, T2 green. But once you get on the green, to me, that's going to be, where somebody could really steal the show and kind of not be that long hitter or not be world number 1. But that's, again, there's so much luck. There's the Friday, Thursday split, what time you go out. There's so many elements to major championship play that play a factor in this that a lot of people don't put a whole lot of stock into.
The number 2 rated player on the tour in driving accuracy, it happens to be somebody I'm finishing up a story about for tomorrow, Collin Morikawa. You know what? If you drive it to the right place every hole, which he's number 2 on the tour, he has a shot, doesn't he?
There's a group of them, Xander Schauffele, Collin Morikawa, can they, Justin Thomas has sort of fallen back into that. Spieth certainly has fallen back into that, but it does feel like we are due, right? Rory, it felt like destiny. He was going to win the Masters, but, it feels like we are due, Paul, where somebody kind of can bring themselves back to life. And, Collin Morikawa won, he won the Open. Boy, what year was that? That seems like a long time ago now. Or was it the PGA? But he's got a major under his belt where he just was totally tidy, and that's kind of always been his game. That we talk about Scottie. We talk about how good he is. We talk about how good Scheffler is. We talk about how good Tiger was. The key to being really good at golf is to learn how to make a par or bogey when you're facing a number.
Right.
Everybody talks about, Tiger won in 19. Sure, Tiger won in 19, but what happened in 19 at the Masters. Spieth made it 12 on 12 and let him in. You can't get bit. You just can't get bit by a big number. In addition to putting, I'd be willing to bet, the guy that wins this championship has the fewest double bogeys as well, because there's a double bogey lurking everywhere. Sometimes you just have to make a bogey and march on to the next tee, take your medicine. USGA really, really rewards somebody for taking a risk, but my goodness, do you pay the tab if you miss the opportunity on that risk?
Yeah. Last one real quick. We'll get you out of here. Who do you have, a dark horse? Do you have somebody you look at nobody seems to be talking about, but they have sort of the kind of game that might translate here?
I don't know. I mean, I get tired of talking about him because he's not really done it ever. He's been on the precipice of it how many times? He's won a pile of money. He's always in contention. I mean, they call the guy Fairway Jesus, right? Tommy Fleetwood is a guy that is just a good ball striker and moves it around, plots itself around. But how many times can you say that he's an underdog before he's not even an underdog? He's just a guy that's going to, end up in the tail end of the top 10 again. He won $25 million or something in his career and never won an event. He's always hovering. But, a guy like him, I feel like he could play well. But I also think, with the way this golf course plays out, you may see some foreigners that you've never heard of that grew up playing links style golf, that this could really kind of turn into a links type event, especially if it gets that hard. Guys hitting bouncing 7-irons on from, 300 yards away, just knowing how to, control the trajectory and letting a ball that's going to roll out. Cause I don't know how much stopping you're going to do with the spin. There's a lot of undulation there. So if there's a dark horse, it could be a European that has obviously grew up on a link style golf course.
Well, Joe, as always, thank you so much for you out there. Game's always on at Archie's. Get down to Archie's on Carson Street. Archie's, home of 80-cent wings, Monday through Thursday, home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. Joe, we'll do it again soon. Enjoy the week. Enjoy the Open. And if you stop by, Joe, I'll be there every day. So
I think I've got my own golf for the rest of the week. But I appreciate it as always, Paul. Be good, my friend.
All right, brother. That's Joe Lednowski, Pennsylvania Sports Network. I am Paul Zeise. Of course, we have the big show. Hopefully tomorrow the situations are a little better, so I don't have to scramble to find a place to do it, and I'll be in a nice, tight radio booth. But if not, we always get it done. All right. Enjoy your night.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode. Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.